Hello everyone, and welcome to another random video. This one is gonna be about my daily system and the configuration I've been running for I think 1.5 years now, and really the only thing that changed in that time is the RAM kit. As you can see, I'm using some Viper steels. They used to be Vengeance RGBs. That kit died, I remade it, and now I got these. So, full setup, and like peripherals, I have a big mousepad that I got at PDXCon 2019 when it was in Berlin. Just a pretty random mousepad. I think it's very similar to the Gamers Nexus mousepad from how it's made. The mouse is a Logitech G402 Hyperion Fury. I've had this mouse. This is actually the oldest piece of hardware that I still have. Actually, the keyboard might be. One of the two is the oldest piece of hardware I still have. Yeah, the keyboard is a Razer Black Widow Ultimate 2014 edition. I actually did not pay for this. And the interesting part about this keyboard is you can see this is an American layout. There's no German umlaute. There's like Z and Y. So this is a QWERTY. In Germany we use QWERTZ. So this is a US layout. Because I did not buy this keyboard, I actually won it at Gamescom 2014. Because, well, it was one of the guys at the Nvidia booth. They had some giveaways going, and at the last day, when they closed down the booth, they realized they still have some stuff there. So they just went around with what they had left over to random people and asked them if they wanted. And they asked me if I wanted this keyboard. At the time, I was using a Dell Office keyboard, so of course I went for this one. And I've been using it ever since. Then the screen, that's a relatively new edition. That's a Gigabyte M27Q. It's a 1440p 170Hz display. Then this one, that's a BenQ, whatever that is, 60Hz, Full HD, pretty old monitor. Not really that, like it only does Discord and YouTube, so don't really care about it. I game on this one. Then, I think I can, yeah, I mean, I've showed this in one video already. That's a Behringer Xenix 1002 USB. That's my shuffleboard. And the second one I have of these, I had one before that died because this thing has a VRM in it that overheats so much that the capacitors in it die, and then there's no more filtering and you get 50 Hz AC noise in your sound, which is why there's a fan right next to it, and I've put it up on the remains of the old one, so there's airflow going under it where a little heatsink is. Then, well, because I like Destiny a lot, I have an Exo Stranger figurine right here. No, it's not Kate 6. I've had people ask this several times. It's the Exo Stranger. It's a different person. So yeah, and now let's get into my system. So the core components for this I've had since, well, I got the CPU in February 2018. I got the graphics card in February 2019. So the CPU is an i7-8700K on a Z370 Aorus Gaming 5. The graphics card is a RTX 2080 Ti Aorus Extreme. As you can see, both is custom water cooled. For the graphics card, mostly because the stock heatsink for the Aorus Extreme is rather mediocre. Like it's pretty silent, but the performance-wise, it's like on par with the Founders Edition, which is not great. Then the CPU, I used to have an AIO on this. The AIO is now on my test bench on the 1800X. Because this CPU is like, the CPU is actually pretty good. So from what I can tell, this 8700K is a winner. It's not the best CPU ever, but it's definitely a winner in this Silicon lottery, because this chip runs 5.1 GHz at 1.35 volts. So yeah, and that measurement is at the VRM. My motherboard has no VR, Vout, no dye sense, so I only know the voltage at the VRM. the on-die voltage is probably 1.25 to 1.27 volts, if I remember correctly. Like, there's quite a lot of voltage drop over the socket and the power plane. So yeah. Then the RAM kit is a 3600 CL17 Viper steel kit. I haven't bothered with overclocking it to CL16 yet, but that's probably possible. It's just that the motherboard, like the Z370 Gaming 5, is a very annoying thing where it has a BIOS glitch. When you change memory settings and reboot, for some reason it just sets your vCore to 1.55 volts, which is a lot. So yeah, I guess I should just update BIOS to fix that, but really I can't be bothered. Intel doesn't scale that much with memory clock, and Intel doesn't even have gear down mode, so CL17 is not even an issue. On AMD, this would be an issue because CL17 would turn into CL18, and then this CJR kit would be as good as a C-die kit, which is what I had before, though that C-die kit was a 3200 CL16 or 3618. So yeah. Then my boot drive down there, that's a Samsung 970 EVO 256GB. I have a lot of drives in this thing. So that's the boot drive. You can kind of see it here. There's an HDD there. There's another one down there. This is a 6TB Barracuda. There's a 2TB Barracuda. And then behind the motherboard, there's a 256GB 850 EVO and a 512GB 850 Pro. That's all the drives I have in here. So yeah. And what's there more? So the graphics card is mounted vertically using the Fantex GPU riser. I used to have the Cooler Master one, but the riser cable in that one died. So I switched to the Fantex one. And the Fantex one also actually is a bit lower. So you can see this water cooling tube bend is very, very, very borderline. Like it's actually kinking a little bit here. And the Cooler Master one used to be slightly higher up, and that made this kinking worse. So the Fantex one is, I've just switched to it and never regretted it. Then, the fans in this system, so there's 3 120mm Corsair HD 120 RGBs. There is a 140 HD 140 RGB here, and then there's another one down in the PSU shroud. And then the two in the front here are Corsair ML140s. So those don't have RGB, so no RGB here, just intake. The case is a Fractal Design Meshify S2. It's the old one, not the new one. The new one has like some tweaks to it, but this is the old version. The new one wasn't a thing back then. And yeah, before this case, I used to have a Darkbase 700, which I've now given to my sister. I really like the Darkbase 700. It might actually be my favorite case. It's just that custom water cooling in the Darkbase 700 isn't that great. So I decided to swap to a case that's more water cooling friendly and also had more airflow. So the Meshify S2 I've been very happy with. So yeah, nice radiator support. As you can see, I have 2 rads. So yeah, let's actually get into the water cooling stuff. So the block for the GPU, that's just the Vector Aorus block that I chipped the name off a bit. There is a backplate on the card that I never see, but yet I still spent €100 on that. And yeah, that's just the EK block for the Aorus Extreme 2080 Ti. The CPU block is a Supremacy Evo RGB. This, I think, was called the XRES 150. It's a D5 pump with like a medium-sized reservoir. Don't really care about the reservoir size. And then the radiator. The top one is a Coolstream SE 360, so 360 rad, 2.8 centimeters thick. The one in the front is a Coolstream CE 280, I think, so 280 rad and 4 centimeters thick. In the beginning, I actually only had the top red. That was still back in the Dark Base 700. But actually my graphics card then got hotter than on the stock heatsink, because that 360 red in that case actually wasn't powerful enough. So I got the second radiator, which this actually has more surface area than this one. And now the temps are fine. So my load temperatures for the graphics card, like right now the side panel's off. I actually had the system without the side panel for a while, but recently I put it back on because it doesn't really make a difference for temperatures actually. So mostly the load temperatures for the graphics card are like 42 degrees. If it's really maxed out, for a long time it goes up to 48. And on the CPU, well, it's an 8700K running 5.1 GHz. It's hot. It's very hot. This still has thermal paste on it. I have not deleted it. I have not lapped it. So the CPU gets very hot. It can spike over 95 very easily. Actually, I just need to launch Minecraft and then it spikes up to 95 and higher. So, yeah. Not that great. And then the power supply, which you can see here, you can kind of see the sticker. The power supply is a Corsair RM750X. This is, I think, yeah, that power supply is the oldest piece of hardware in the case. Because this power supply I had in a really old version of my daily system, back when I still was using an i5-3570 and my 780 Ti Windforce. So my original daily system used to be a pre-build with a GTX 650. I replaced that 650 with the 780 Ti Windforce. But the thing is, that pre-built system opted for a very cheap 600 watt, or more like 600 watt power supply that was non-powder coated, and I had to use one of those 2 Molex to 8-pin adapters for the card. So very much not very good power supply. And as you can probably imagine by now, it blew up. So that's when I got the RM750X. It's been doing very good ever since, like 750 watts, that's plenty. On the RMX series, you actually also get 750 watts on your 12 volt rail. It's a single 12 volt rail power supply. So I am getting all the power I need. The graphics, the Aorus Extreme has a pretty high power limit. It has a 366 watt power limit if I crank the slider, which I did. In the 8700K, that's like, I estimate 180 watts on a load, like it's a 6-core. It doesn't consume that much power, it just gets very hot. So I'm actually nowhere near maxing out the 750 watts. Though, well, I guess I could always get a more power-hungry CPU, though I'm not planning to. But speaking of getting a new CPU, so kinda why I felt the urgency to make this video now is because the daily system might be about to change quite significantly. I think I've already talked about this in a video. I was thinking about upgrading the test bench to a better CPU that would be better for 3D Mark scores, because first and second gen Ryzen they actually negatively impact your GPU scores in benchmarks, and yeah, that's actually the entire reason why I wanted a new CPU for that thing. And also then my sister could have the 1800X for her system, because she actually uses it for real work. So I am currently lining up to get a B550 Aorus Master, a Ryzen 7 5800X, and a new RAM kit, which it's a 3200 CL14-14-14 kit, so it's hopefully gonna be B-die. And that hardware, if I manage to get it, will go into my daily, and then this motherboard, CPU and RAM will go into the test bench, while the current test bench CPU, motherboard and RAM will go to my sister's PC. So yeah, this system could change a bit. So yeah, there's actually no real reason why I need the upgrade right now. This daily system is it does what I need it to do. I actually don't need an upgrade. Like, I don't need an upgrade. Like the 5800X, it has more cores and it is more powerful per core than the 8700K, and it consumes less power. So, yeah, the CPU is an upgrade, but I don't think I'll really be feeling the upgrade. I might get some more frames in CPU-heavy games, because I've noticed that in a lot of games my graphics card is not really, like, it's not fully utilized. In a lot of games I see my GPU at like 60 to 80% usage. It very rarely hits 100%, which is where that usually 42 degrees comes from, but when I really hit it, 48. So with the new CPU this might change, but I do not know actually. So yeah, I'm just doing the upgrade because, well, I can basically, because I have this chance to get newer hardware, to also upgrade my test bench, and to also give my sister some better components, because she's still on a 4-core 4-thread Haswell CPU with DDR3 and actually using 3 sticks. Because she's one 8 gig sticks and one 8 gig stick and 2 4 gig sticks, and it's pretty bad. Because she also has a 980 Ti, like I gave her my Strix, and that graphics card is just hopelessly bottlenecked. Even my 780 Ti was bottlenecked by my old i5, and yes, my i5 was an Ivy Bridge, hers is Haswell, but like there's not really that big of a difference. It just doesn't have that many threads. It has 4. The 1800X she would get has 16, so yeah, that's an easy 3 times increase in thread count, and a 2 times increase in real cores. So yeah. Then any components left that I still haven't talked about? Yes, actually there are some RGB strips in this that are not working really well. Actually, you might see the fan. You can see how some LEDs from this fan do not change color according to the pattern that the other fans have, because that fan is damaged. So are the RGB strips. So they are just set to purple, because if I set any effect on them, they will bug out. So these are the 2 remaining ones. There's one up here that I unplugged, because it also has a dead LED that just spews out rainbow garbage and is really annoying when I turn it on. There's another RGB strip back here that seems to be working fine. But these 2, when I set them to anything other than a static color, they also have several LEDs that just spaz out. All the RGB, like the fans and the strips, are controlled by a Corsair Commander Pro. It also controls my fan speeds, which means I have... so, the exhaust, this middle fan, and the intake and the PSU shroud I have tied to CPU temperature. The 2 intakes and the 2 exhausts over here are tied to GPU temperature. So that's what the Commander Pro is for, because BIOS side I cannot set the GPU as a temperature sensor. And considering my GPU puts out more heat than the CPU and is also more heat sensitive than the CPU, I tied a lot more fans to GPU speed than CPU. And I mean, chances are when the CPU is getting hot, the GPU is also on the load, so those fans are gonna spin up as well. So yeah. And I think that should be pretty much it. Yeah, so that's my daily system. The microphone. That's a Rode NT1A on a really sketchy microphone arm. Because those springs are not strong enough to actually hold up the weight of the microphone, so I just put a couple, I don't know if that's DDR1 or something else, sticks in between there. So, yeah. And then my headset, that's a HyperX Cloud 2. I removed the microphone because, well, I have this one. And there's also Wi-Fi antenna because my motherboard has Wi-Fi, and I actually use that because the LAN port on my motherboard seems to be faulty. Because when I plug in a LAN cable, it works, but after 5 minutes, Windows tells me that the LAN cable was unplugged, and I then have to remove it and plug it back in to get a connection back. And yeah, I'm just not gonna deal with this. I live in Germany, my internet is 10 Mbits down, 1 Mbit up. Wi-Fi can cover this. Like, it's not the protocol to which I connect to the internet that's slowing me down. It's just the place where I live, because I live in rural Germany. And even if I was in a city, my internet would be pretty bad compared to what the rest of the world has. So yeah, that's my setup. You can see how it progressively gets more crammed to the left, because that's where the test bench is, right here. So yeah, I brought some cake that I'm gonna eat now, because I'm hungry, and I'm gonna end this video. And we actually crossed 20 minutes, so yeah. So that's my daily system. Oh, I forgot to mention that the graphics card is also overclocked. Well, I made a video where I said what this is overclocked to. TLDR is 2115 daily average, 2145 daily max, though I usually don't get there unless the card is really, really cool. Memory on this just has the slider maxed, actually on top of the factory overclock, which brings this card to 17.144 GHz memory clock effective, which, that's quite something. The memory on this card is really good, and the core is, it's decent. Not the best I've ever seen, but it's decent. So yeah, that really is it. That's my daily system. So thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and until next time, goodbye.